Hello, this is Lynn David Livsey of Encounters. I'm your full spectrum Gnostic, and I have a great podcast for you today. Today we're talking about Edward Cayce, the sleeping prophet. So this is a very interesting subject. I think for those who don't know about Edward Cayce, this would be very educational. And let's get started. So, who was Edward Cayce? Edward Cayce was born in Kentucky in 1877, and he was just a country boy. But his life took some very weird turns. For one, when he was a kid, he had invisible friends, and he would spend a lot of time with his invisible friends, which he called the little folks. He would play with them. And then when he got older, he was not very good in school. He did not have a lot of friends. And he was doing very bad. And he was getting in a lot of trouble with his dad and everything because he wasn't doing well in school and whatever. And then he had this angel to appear to him. And this angel was, to him, a life-changing experience because this angel gave him a gift. And this angel became like his spirit guide or guardian or whatever you want to say. And this spirit stayed with him basically the rest of his life and gave him a lot of advice. And since he was having so much trouble in school, the spirit told him to do something, was to sleep on his books. And what he would do is he could take a nap on one of his books. And when he would wake up, he wouldn't know all the answers. And this is crazy. Okay, I wish I had that gift. I wish I could sleep on some books and get all the knowledge. But this is how he received his knowledge. He had to go to sleep, and this is what he used throughout his schooling. And he became a very bright student. But the problem is he would tell people about this, which disturbed a lot of people, you could imagine, because this is what he was doing because, he wasn't that formally educated and he wasn't that good, but he could sleep on his books and then he could tell you about whatever the subject matter was. So this led him into searching into things, and he met some hypnotists, and he was thinking, in his life, he kept going in different directions. He would try this and try that. He tried to work with this guy that was doing hypnotism, and that didn't really go right. And then he tried to be a photographer, and that didn't really go right. And he tried throughout his life to do several businesses. And he kept trying over and over again to use his abilities. He also tried to work with several religious groups and organizations, and that always, he worked with them, but since they did not know where his power was, and since he wasn't using the magic word that his power was of God, he always talked about this angel and his gift and whatever. He worked with them, but at the same time, they didn't really accept him 100% later. So he was always like the odd man out. But he was trying to make money because he was always struggling financially in his life. And people always wanted to use his gift and ability. And he was trying to use his gift and ability. So when he tried different things, he could help other people, but just like I say, unfortunately, in my life, he was unable to help himself. And as long as he was helping other people, it seemed to be okay. But when he would try to help himself in his photography business during the Depression, he tried to help some stock investors. He tried to help some people with oil investing and trying to figure out where to drill oil wells. None of these things really worked, okay, because his ability wouldn't help him to make money. It was more into helping people on a personal basis. And that is where he slowly started turning his attention later on in his life into the thing that he was good at doing, was helping people. And he formed several groups, and one of the big groups he's known for today is the Association for Research and Enlightenment. And this group this organization still exists, and this is where all of his readings and things are located. Because we're going to get into now what the later part of his life and what he's known for. He was known for doing readings, and these was health readings was what he was known for, and what would come out of these health readings, and nobody been able to duplicate this or whatever, but this is fascinating, and this is why most people want to know about his life. And then we're going to get into some of his predictions. But let's talk about his health readings first. So what he would do is he would receive letters from people from all over the world. Okay, and since he was kind of struggling, some of these letters had money in them, some of them didn't, and he would receive bags of mail. And what he would do, he didn't like to go through the letters. He had a secretary that would go through the letters, and she would pick some out. Now, he was instructed he only was supposed to do one or no more than 2 readings a day. But at the end of his life, he was trying to do it, because when you're getting bags of mail and you can only do 1 or 2 readings a day, that's not going to do anything. So he was way beyond that. He was trying to do 7, 8, 10 readings a day. And this was mental and physically draining on him. Okay. But this is how he would do his readings. So his assistant would pick out the one he's going to do. Not him, his assistant would. He would lay on the couch and he would go into like a trance. And then she would say the name of the person and the address which they live at. And then it would be a long silence. And then he would say, I have the body. And he would start describing the person from head to toe and describing, where they live at in the whole 9 yards and whatever. And then he would start going over their body in minute detail. What was wrong with them, what problems they had, what ailments they had, the whole 9 yards. And he would tell them what cures they needed to fix their problem. Now, modern medicine existed back in the the 20s. Back he was doing the most of this in the late 20s, 30s, and in the 40s. But modern medicine was around then. It wasn't as advanced as what it is now. But what was remarkable about his readings, he never prescribed any at that time, the modern medications. He always described holistic treatments where you need this and you need molasses and you need this herb and you need this and you need to mix these 2 together and you need to make a tea or you need to make an ointment or you need to do this. And the lady would write all of this down, his assistant. And it was remarkable the things that he could heal. Okay. And people was just amazed at what he would do. And he would describe the person, the house, to the minute detail. And even though his remedies, some of these, some of these things he was telling people to mix together or whatever, and herbs and everything, was not what they would call modern medicine at that time, it worked wonders for that person. And that's the reason, as the word got out, he kept getting more and more and more and more mail, because people was amazed at how great he was. And he never asked for money. It was just what people sent them, their donations. And he tried to start a hospital, a clinic. None of this worked, because I guess with his gifts, every gift, this is what people don't understand. When you have a gift, like I have met several healers before. Most healers have terrible health. They can cure others and help others, but for some reason they can't help themselves. This is the frustrating thing with me. I have the gift of knowledge, and I have helped dozens and hundreds of people with problems in their life, problems in their relationship, problems with this. But when it comes to my problems, I can't seem to figure them out. Okay, and that's extremely frustrating. And this is the problem that he had. Even though he was able to help so many people, but he was only able to help them on an individual basis. When he tried to work with people in a clinic basis or in a hospital basis, it did not work. It had to be on an individual basis. And he was limited to, what he could do. He was limited to basically just helping a single person. But he wanted to help the masses. Because with his gift, he thought, at the time, just like today, there was a lot of cancers and there was a lot of ailments and there was a lot of this or that. And he just wanted to help everyone. But he was so limited at this burden of, this is why he didn't want to pick the letters. Because if he was doing 3 readings or 5 readings that day, and there's a whole bag of mail, you don't want to pick and choose about who's going to get help and who's not going to get help. That's the reason he left that up to his assistant. Okay. So he would do these readings. And these readings was remarkable. And what they did with all the readings, this is why you can go to the Institute today, and all those readings are documented in minute detail. The person and whatever. And sometimes after he helped the person would write back in. You know what I'm saying? And they would talk about how great it was and how, they had this problem. They had this cyst on their leg and doctor couldn't heal it. And they went and put that ointment on there and the cyst went away or whatever it was. Or, it was amazing. Okay. But this is what he spent a lot of his time doing, was doing these medical readings. And this is what he's most known for. And now, so sometimes when he was laying on the couch, people wanted to know where was he getting this information from. So every now and then, they would ask him, instead of doing a medical reading, they would ask a question. The answers to some of these questions was mind-blowing. They asked him, where are you getting this information from? Okay. He said he was able to access the Cayce records. According to him, he described these records. It's very similar to what he was talking about to what's in the Urantia book. The Urantia book talks about that even, the Urantia book don't view life as we know it. They don't go by this thing of evolution where life starts on a planet by itself with that primordial soup and just evolves out of there. To the Urantia book, all life, it has to be implanted on a planet. Okay. And there's beings that go around implanting life on different planets. Okay. And even though life is implanted on different planets, and even though a life like on the earth, there's 7 billion people on this planet, the Urantia book talk about that each planet only has a single mind. What does that mean? How can a planet only have a single mind? You mean there's 7 billion of us on this planet, but this planet only has one mind? And that was just mind-blowing. Okay. That sounds crazy. But today we can understand what maybe that's talking about. Because even though we have billions of computers in the world, and we got billions of cell phones and this and that and whatever, all of these are hooked up to a single computer called the internet. Most people are not aware of that. The internet is a single computer or mainframe that all these billion of devices are hooked up to. And this is why we are able to exchange information all around the world, and you're able to FaceTime people and chat with people and do everything, because we're all hooked up to this single network. Is this what the Urantia book was talking about? And is this what Edgar Cayce was talking about? That he is able to tap into the Akasha record, and this Akasha record is the permanent history of all life on earth, and everyone is connected to this record. And what he do is tap into the records of that individual person. And that record includes the information, the data about everything about that person. That's amazing. Okay. So I guess, people today can hack computers. If you could hack that database, I guess you could find out, anything about any person in the world. But this is amazing. And he went into minute detail describing how this Akasha record worked. But according to him, this record is the permanent history of mankind life upon the earth. And it contains all information on everyone who has ever lived. That's amazing. And that is how he was able to tap in people. And that is why he had that long silence when they would give him the name and the address, because he had to go to the record. I guess he had to go to the file cabinet and find and pull up that file. Okay. And that's the reason when he would say, I have the body, then he would start describing that person, their house, everything about him in minute detail. Okay. So a lot of people, how I view that today, I talk about when I do readings that I'm tapping into the karmic record or the record by the watchers. And the watchers that watch everyone on this earth have a record of everything we're doing at all times. Now, is this the same, or is this a different record? Or, I don't know. They haven't let me in that building. I couldn't tell you how this works. Okay. But the thought of that, if you think about that for 1 minute, that's an amazing thought. Okay. So based on that information, sometimes they would ask him other questions. They would asking him about the Egyptians and asking about this. And sometimes they wouldn't even ask. In between readings, he would just start talking about stuff. And some of this stuff he talked about, was mind-blowing. And some of this stuff today, and you can read about this yourself, we know none of this today. And he made several predictions. Some of these predictions are still outstanding. Some of these predictions are very controversial. Okay. He predicted that Atlantis would start rising back in the 70s. And it would start, they would find pieces of Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean. And people thought that was crazy. Some people thought that Atlantis would appear. Atlantis is not there today. But they keep finding these strange things, especially off the coast of Cuba and off of places in the Caribbean, like off the coast of Cuba. They have found, ruins and the ruins of buildings off the coast of Cuba. But some of these ruins are in 1,000, 1,200 feet of water. Now, how do you have ruins that deep in the water? And in some of these, like Bimini Roll and whatever, which is in the Caribbean, they have found these strange architectural patterns. And there's the argument over, are these natural like ruins of something that existed before? Some scientists those are natural formations and whatever. Okay, they've been debating this stuff ever since the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and they keep finding more and more stuff along the Caribbean and other places. So is Atlantis slowly rising again? We don't know. I haven't seen any Atlantis out there lately. But he made that prediction. He was one of the first people to predict something called polar shift, about the Earth pole was going to change. and that there was several pole changes before. And back when he was talking about this, no one knew anything. Everybody thought the earth was steady state. The way the earth is now, it's been that way for millions of years. He was talking about how the poles shift one position to the other. And we now know this is true, is that where the North Pole is, it wasn't there. Basically every 12,500 years, the Earth, what we call the North Pole, moves. And how we know this is because of something called magnetite in the Earth. Magnetite is iron ore. When it forms in water, if there's a magnetic field present, all the magnetic lines will line up and it will become magnetic, what they call magnetite. If it's not a magnetic field present, then you will just get iron ore deposits. But when you look at magnetite in the earth, since it's magnetic, it will line up, all the particles will line up with the pole. But when you dig into the earth, all the magnetite is lined up in a single direction. And then when you dig so far, it switches to another direction. And then when you dig so far, it switches to another direction. And they have taken this from different positions all over the earth, and they have extrapolated that where the North Pole used to be at different places. Like we now know, if you had a time machine and went back 12,500 years ago, or what they call 10,500 BC, okay, the North Pole was not in Russia. The North Pole used to be in Hudson Bay, Canada. And we know this is true because this is why until the end of the Ice Age, as they probably taught you in school, which they did me, that all of North America was covered by a glacier. And when the North Pole moved from Hudson Bay, Canada to Russia, all the new land opened up because the glacier melted. And they make a big deal about this in Ohio because they say the Ohio River was the point of where the glacier ended. And this is why where you have the line between you have Ohio on one side and Kentucky on the other side. Ohio is totally flat. And then you look on the other side of the Ohio River and you see all these mountains and hills because they say that is where the glacier stopped. Okay, and the pressure of the glacier is what flattened the land on the Ohio side. And on the Kentucky side, that's the reason you got all the hills going into Kentucky and Tennessee and all of that. Okay, I wasn't there though. Okay, but so and this American Indians talk about this too. So these things, now Cayce was the first modern person. When he was talking this in the 30s and 40s, people was like, what? We didn't know about any of this. Okay. And he is going to move next time. And that this polar shift was going to happen again. Okay, not only that it happened in the past, that in the near future, it was going to happen again. And he said, send all your hate mail to Edward Cayce, or let me give you the name of this institute so you can send it over there, the Association for Research and Enlightenment. Don't send it to Lynn David Livsey. That he was saying that the North Pole, when it moves again, is going to move from Russia to right above Scandinavia. And all of Europe is going to be covered by ice. And the ice is going to be so thick in Europe that they're going to try to use nuclear missiles to break the ice. Well, he didn't say nuclear missiles. He said they was going to try to use missiles to break the ice. Okay. And the majority of the surviving population of Europe would move to northern Africa. Okay. Now, to be talking stuff like this in the 40s, that's some pretty hardcore stuff. You got to think in the 40s, this was during, World War II and whatever, and people was like, what? Okay. This was really deep stuff. So these are the things that he was talking about. And some of his predictions was just hardcore. Okay. And you think that's hardcore. Okay. about Europe being covered by a glacier. Okay. And the surviving population of Europe moving to northern Africa. That's really deep. Okay. But that wasn't the only thing. He talked about the United States was going to break apart. Okay. And that the United States was going to break into two pieces, and where the Mississippi River is now was going to form to this giant river that you would be able to sail ships, that this would, the United States would basically break in half, and you would have, the land, east of the Mississippi River and the land that's safe. And this gap would be probably 50 or 100 miles across. And you would be able to sail easily, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, because America would be broken in half. Okay. This didn't go over too well. Okay. Did he stop there? Of course not. He talked about that large portions of California was going to fall into the sea and this and that, and most of the West Coast was going to be lost, and the Pacific Ocean would go all the way to Arizona and everything. This was not very popular stuff. Okay. A lot of this was turned into maps, the scaling maps that came out later. Okay. After around 20 years later, a guy named Scaling made maps, and you can pull those up on the internet, that shows what Cayce was talking about and whatever. And Cayce was talking about some of the other changes around the world that was going to pin up, and that this new land was going to pop up in the Atlantic Ocean between us and Europe. And there was going to be another new land that was going to pop up in the Pacific Ocean also. So he was just making, and people was like, what? What? And this was hardcore. See, it's different when you talk about China or whatever. But when you're talking about the United States breaking into two parts and all the West Coast falling into the Pacific Ocean and Arizona being the new coast and everything, this did not go over very well. Okay. Now, this is what some people ever since then been worried about. And that's the reason you even have songs that talk about, I say, you some beachfront property in Arizona. Okay. Because this is where all this craziness come from. Now, is it craziness, or is this just something that's going to happen and it just haven't occurred yet? Okay. So, I don't know. Okay. But Cayce talked about a lot of strange things that, you can look into this yourself. Some of these predictions, people thought was going to be in the near term. He died in 1945. Okay. This is 2020. So, this is the problem with looking into the future. This is why when Nostradamus tried to look into the future, he always looked at the stars or tried to look at the alignment of planets. Because if you're looking into the future, unless you can see a calendar or something hanging on a wall, how do you know what year it is? Is that the year 2025? Is that the year 2047? What year do you know? Is that, how do you know? So Nostradamus was always, when he would give a prediction, he would talk about the alignment of the planet and the alignment of the stars. Okay, to give you some kind of time frame of what year that is. Cayce didn't do that. So is his predictions talking 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now? We have no way of knowing because there is no time scale attached to this stuff. Okay. And now, when Edgar Cayce was saying these things in the 40s, he wasn't very popular. But today, you have major scientists that talk about, that the West Coast could, there could be a 10-point earthquake and California could, break off and what's going on in California and what happened if this happened and what happened to this. And, you know, see, it's not the crazy people talking anymore. Now you have mainstream science worried about this stuff and talk about how unstable the west coast of the United States is, because it's a part of something called the Ring of Fire, and which is this circle of, along the entire Pacific Rim. That includes California all the way down to Chile, going up to Alaska, all the way to Russia, going to Japan, Indonesia, all the way to, the Philippines and New Guinea, all the way down. That is where the Ring of Fire is. And that area is collapsing. Now, is it collapsing today, tomorrow, 500 years from now? That's what scientists is debating. Okay. And we don't have a way of knowing. This is one of the things that people was worried about when they had the great tsunami that killed 200,000 people around, 20 years ago. They was thinking that this was the beginning of the big slide where all that land was going to fall into the ocean. But it didn't happen. Cayce also said that in one day, 5 countries will be lost in a single day. When is that? And they will be swallowed by the ocean. Is he talking about the Philippines? Is he talking Indonesia? He's talking Japan? Is he? Okay, see, this is what we don't know. He would just make these predictions when he was in his trance. And a lot of times when he woke up, he knew very little of what he was talking about when he was in the trance. So a lot of times when he came out and they say, hey, you was talking crazy. What was that you was talking about? He's like, I don't know what I say. What did I say? A lot of times he had very little or no idea of what he was talking about. So, these gets into what is called the 2 theories of time. Some people believe that time is a river. And like if you're going down that river of time in a canoe and you see that glacier up, that iceberg up ahead, you have choices. You can go straight and hit the iceberg, or maybe you can maneuver and try to go around it. That gives you something called free will. You have a choice. But some people believe that time is a book. And the book has already been written. The book been written, millions of years ago. And basically, we just turn the pages. Every day we turn another page. And this is why the Bible and other books talk about predictions in the future and what's going to happen, because they're cheating. They just go a chapter or two in the book and they say what happens. And this is not something new that goes back to biblical time. If you go back to the book of Enoch, where they talk about the parable of weeks, the parable of weeks in the book of Enoch goes from the beginning of time to the end of time. And it talk about what happens in the first week, and then the second week, and then the third week, and then oh my gosh, that's very scary. Now, no one have ever been able to figure that prophecy out. So some people say we're in this week, and some people say we're in that week, and you know what I'm saying? And every thing that happened, I say, see, that proves we're in, okay. But no one has been able to figure this out. And you can go to the book of Enoch and read that yourself. It's very deep. But if we're this is why the Greeks called it divine comedy. If time is already written, and if we're just turning the pages one by one, and if Edward Cayce just looked a few pages up and saw this and told us about this, and this is what Notre Dame was doing, okay, we just need to enjoy the ride, okay, because basically there's nothing we can do about it. If time is a book. Now, if time is a river, then maybe we can avoid some of these icebergs ahead of us. And maybe we can maneuver to go around them. Okay. I don't have any answers on this. Okay. But this is the thing that Edward Cayce is still known for today. Okay. Now, a lot of these medical things are being looked into because what he was doing, some people call him the father of holistic medicine because at the time when he was writing, people was trying to get out of herbal remedies, this and that, and they was turning towards what we call today modern medicine, pills and this and that and all kind of things. And it was the beginning of, what we call today, everything is cures and treatments for stuff. Not too many cures, but a lot of treatments. You have diabetes, heart disease, the doctors say, oh, we have a treatment for that. Very few cures, but a lot of treatments. Okay. And Edgar Cayce did not talk about this. He talked about remedies and oils and this and that and elixirs and making teas and all this stuff and about pH level of the blood, and this person pH level is too high and their blood is too acidic and all this stuff. See, we are not into any of that stuff today. Okay. But this is what holistic medicine is all about. Is that, like, for example, people that have a very high pH in their blood, they also have a very high rate of cancer and very high rate of a lot of things because their blood is very acidic. And people that have a very low pH in their blood has a very, their level of cancer and level of disease is very low. And your diet should emphasize about pH level and other things. See, these are the things that Edgar Cayce talked about. Modern medicine, that's not important. Okay. If you got a problem, go to the doctor, and they have a remedy for that. Okay. Hope they come up with a remedy for this coronavirus very soon. But, he saw disease differently. So a lot of people still goes through, says all of his readings are heavily documented. And they talk about everything, describing the ailment of the person in minute detail, and what herb and what tea and what ointment had to be made to cure that thing. Some people have been trying to use this information on problems we have today because a lot of people are kind of tired of popping pills and taking this and vaccines and all this crazy stuff, because modern medicine, even though it's been around for 150 years, there's very few things that has been cured in 150 years. Okay. We just keep coming up with new treatments. And that's what some people are worried about with this coronavirus. They're not going to come up with a cure for this virus. They're going to come up with a vaccine. And every year, just like the flu vaccine, you're going to have to take this vaccine. And kids today are being pumped with so many vaccines and things when there was a kid. Do we want to add one or two more things to that long list? Okay. But is that the best we can do? Is keep making more and more vaccines, more and more treatments, more and more of this, more and more things. But we're not curing everything. And if you got diabetes or heart disease, they're going to treat it for 30, 40, 50 years. They're not going to cure your diabetes. They're just going to treat it. Okay. When you look back in his books, when people had these things, you could do that yourself, because I don't want to be telling you should do this or you can do that. But you can go and you can investigate yourself. He talks about all of this stuff. And if you have this problem, the problem is caused by the pH, or the problem is caused by this, or problem would cause, telling people to eat less meat and eat more, and eat a vegetarian diet and all this stuff. He goes into all of that. Okay. Controlling diabetes, controlling all kind of stuff. So you can go on the internet, and there's a lot of information about these holistic remedies that he was talking about. Okay. But this is what Edgar Cayce was known for. But as I said, even though he helped thousands of people, through his readings, he helped people by the knowledge he gave them. He tried to work with, hospitals. He tried to work with religious organizations. He tried so many things. But when he died, he was still basically broke. He never was able to solve his financial problems. He was always struggling just to make it. Okay. So even though he had all this knowledge and his guides and this and that and whatever, he was never able to profit off of his abilities. He died poor. Okay. So, some people would say, what's the point of helping other people? What's the point of trying to save all these people if you can't even save himself? Okay, and this is why he kept trying to do more and more readings, because the need was there. And as the mail came in and in and in, he was trying so hard. And the readings kept warning him that he was doing too many readings. He needed to slow down until the fateful, unfortunate day. This only happened to two people we know, Edward Cayce and Notre Dame. Both of them prophesied the day they was going to die. Now, that's not a good prophecy. You really don't want to make a habit of doing that. Okay. Okay. But Edward Cayce prophesied the day he was going to die because he was doing too many readings and he had drained his body and he was going to die. And he prophesied the day he was going to die, and he died on that day. Do you want that ability? Well, okay. But he died dirt broke. So he was born poor. He died poor. Helped a lot of people. But he was never really able to help himself. But he did his part. But this is the problem, as I said, that people, that psychics, that are so many people that are healers, that are so many people that do light work. This is, unfortunately, is what makes so many people turn towards the dark side. Because in the light is very, very hard to help yourself. And so many people that do light work and healing and this and that and everything else, they don't have the big car, the big house, the big this, the big that. They're struggling just to put food on the table every day. It's very, very sad. And myself, I could put my name down with the rest of that too. So it's, and to try to worry about what I'm eating today and I'm going to be able to pay my rent on time and this and that, and then trying to take care of others at the same time is a burden. But I guess this goes all the way back to, John the Baptist. Even though he was the holiest guy in the land, where was he living? He was in a cave. Most people don't know this, but John the Baptist, he was in the temple at one time wearing purple, and he went from being in the temple in Jerusalem to where he went from living in a cave, wearing animal skins, eating fish and raw honey. Okay. But the Bible talk about how he walked with God, this and that and everything else. He baptized Jesus, but he ended up getting his head cut off over a birthday party. Okay. That, is a subject for a different day. But these are the problems that a lot of people have that do light work. There's an inability to help yourself. And some people would say, Lynn, that's not important because their reward is in their afterlife. And even though they had a miserable life here, in their afterlife, they're going to be so wonderful and great. And that's wonderful. That's excellent. That's perfect. But at least they deserve something in this life, in my opinion. But that's a subject for a different day. So I hope you enjoyed our discussion of Edward Cayce. He helped all the people he could, and he ended up sacrificing his life, as they warned him. If he didn't slow his readings down, his life was going to be cut short. But he could not just take bags of mail and only do 1 or 2 people a day. He was not willing to do that. The need was too great. And he sacrificed his health. He sacrificed his life trying to help others. To me, that's the ultimate sacrifice. With that, maybe we need a few more Edward Cayces out there. And maybe he's not the only one that has a gift. I have not heard of anyone else that's able to tap into this record the way he was able to and receive information. I have the gift of knowledge, but the knowledge is given to me. I am not able to tap in. Okay, they give me. I don't have a library card. They give me what they're going to give me when it comes to knowledge. I say I want to talk about this subject, and sometimes I say I want to talk about this, and I don't hear nothing. And other times I say, oh, I think I want to talk about this, and instantly I got what I need. Okay. It would be great if I had a library card where I could go and check out what information I wanted. And I would probably check out how to help Lynn Livsey sometime. Okay. But, it's great that to help other people and be there for people in need. And that's a wonderful thing. I have done my part. He did his part. And maybe you need to do your part too. With that, this is our podcast for the day. I hope you enjoyed it. And I look soon. Thank you so much. Bye.